They say the stars are infinite, but I've learned that the heart has more galaxies than the sky ever could. My name is Kaelen Vorr, an exobotanist stationed on Araxis 9, a border world known more for its iron-rich soil than its hospitality. Life here was quiet, dull even. I liked it that way. Solitude had its charms, no surprises, no heartbreaks, just me, my plants, and the vast silence of space. Until she came. It started on a cold-hued morning, the kind where the sky above Araxis gleamed with 3 suns, their crimson shimmer caught in the thick vapor trails of mining ships. I was cataloging soil samples from the East Crater, nothing special, just sediment layers and mineral concentration, when the proximity alarm blared in my ear, sharp and unwelcome. Unauthorized life form detected, quadrant D7, my pulse quickened. Nobody came here, not without reason. The last time someone wandered near my sector, it was a scavenger drone gone rogue. I grabbed my vapor rifle, standard issue, barely charged, and set out across the dusty field, boots sinking, into the copper-colored dust. The wind hissed, carrying the faint scent of ozone and scorched metal. Then I saw her. She was draped in rags, cloak shredded by the desert winds. Her skin, silver lavender and almost translucent, glowed faintly under the Araxian sun. Slender, tall, her features sharp yet eerily graceful. Clutched in her elongated fingers was one of my nutrient canisters. She saw me and bolted. Instinct took over. I chased her down the ridge across a stretch of jagged terrain. She was fast, almost unnaturally so, but then she faltered. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed beside a sulfur vent, coughing violently. Reached her just as she curled protectively around a small bundle. A child. A tiny creature, no more than a few cycles old, with eyes too large for its head and a skeletal frame that screamed of starvation. "Please," she rasped. Her voice was a melody turned sour, like music made of pain. "My child is hungry." That moment, something inside me cracked. I had seen desperation before, the kind that gnawed at a man's bones during the siege of Elysium back in my military days. But this was deeper, more primal. She wasn't stealing for greed. She was trying to keep her child alive. I dropped the rifle and knelt beside her. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, slowly lifting my hands. "Let me help." Her eyes, wide, shimmering with fear and suspicion, met mine. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the child's faint whimpering. "My name is Kaelen. I live nearby. There's food, shelter." She hesitated, her body trembling. I didn't blame her. Who trusts a stranger on a wasteland planet? Finally, she nodded. I carried her in my arms, the child pressed between us. Her body was light, too light, as if the bones had thinned from malnutrition. Back at my habitat dome, I laid her gently on the cot and prepared the synth meal processor. It wasn't gourmet. Hell, it wasn't even good. But it was nutritious. She watched every movement like a hunted animal. "What's your name?" I asked as I handed her a heated pack of protein gruel. There was a pause, then, in a whisper, "Seru'vela," a name unlike any I'd heard. It sounded like wind over cracked glass. I nodded. "Seru'vela. And your child?" She hesitated again. "Tirax." "Okay," I said, offering a rare smile. "Welcome, Seru'vela. Tirax, you're safe here." Over the next few days, Seru'vela regained her strength. She spoke little, always, cautious, but Tirax responded quickly to the food and warmth. I found myself checking on them more often than necessary, just to hear the child's faint cooing or see the way Seru'vela's violet eyes softened when he slept. There was a gentleness, to her, buried deep beneath the layers of caution and fear, but something about her never quite made sense. She avoided certain questions. Her reactions were too sharp, too trained. She wasn't just a starving mother. She had been someone before this, someone who had lived a life far removed from scavenging. 1. Night. As the Oraxian moons cast a silvery glow through the dome, I found her standing at the viewport, Tirax in her arms, the stars reflected in her eyes like ancient memories. "You used to be someone important, didn't you?" I asked quietly. She didn't turn. Importance is a lie. Power evaporates when the systems fall. "Still," I pressed gently, "you're not just any refugee." She sighed, finally facing me. "I was high strategist of Virelia's Western Armada." I blinked. That wasn't just important. That was legendary. Virelia, the crystalline planet known for its psychic command, elite, had fallen in the Orion collapse. It had been presumed that most of their leaders were dead, but she wasn't. And now, she was hiding on a forgotten border world, feeding her child protein paste in my dome. "Why here?" I asked. "They think I'm dead," she said flatly. "And I want to keep it that way." Over the following weeks, Seru'vela and I formed something fragile, an understanding, a rhythm. It wasn't love, not yet, but there was a current between us, something ancient and inexplicable. Then the breach came. I was out gathering crystal spores from the dune forest, a rare bloom that only opened during certain lunar phases when my comm cracked with static. Then a voice, "Kaelen Vorr, your habitat has been compromised." I froze. That voice wasn't from my systems. I raced back. The dome was in chaos. Doors forced open, lights flashing. Inside, I found Seru'vela crouched over an injured Tirax, plasma burns on her side. A tall figure stood over her, a man in armor unlike any I'd seen. He turned as I entered, visor reflecting my face. "You should have stayed out of this, Vorr," he said in a metallic hiss. "She's property of the Dominion now." "No one owns her," I growled. He moved fast, but I was faster. My military training kicked in. I grabbed the stun rod from the wall, lunged, and drove it into his neck. Sparks exploded. He convulsed, dropping to the ground. Seru'vela stared at me, bleeding and breathing heavily. "I thought I could outrun them," she whispered. "They tracked you?" "No," she said, voice trembling. "Someone told them. The betrayal hit like ice. Someone knew she was alive. And they wanted her back, not to welcome her, but to make an example of her." I wrapped her wound, lifted her again. "We're leaving," I said. "But where?" I looked up at the stars. "Where they'll never find us." We left Araxis 9 behind in a hail of smoke and broken sky. The stolen transport ship was barely functional, a rusting cargo hauler abandoned in a derelict basin near the mining fields. I had kept its ignition code buried in my old files just in case I ever needed to disappear. Funny how I'd thought it would be for my own escape. Not this. Seru'vela lay on the floor behind the pilot seat, wrapped in an emergency blanket, Tirax asleep against her chest. Her plasma burn had begun to swell, and though I sealed it with dermal gel, the wound had the sickly sheen of infection. Time was ticking. The hauler's core groaned with every thrust. The engines hadn't seen warp in years, but we pushed through, the edge of the exoperimeter, slipping into dark space just before Dominion satellites could lock onto our signal. "Where are we going?" she asked weakly, her voice almost lost under the hum of failing thrusters. I glanced at the flickering nav screen, then at the star map burned into my memory from 100 Black Ops missions long past. "Kaedra's Belt," I said. "Out past the Hadeon Rift. There's a station there. Unregistered. No eyes. No laws." She looked at me, her eyes full of disbelief. "That's pirate territory," I smiled bitterly. "That's why they won't look there." We reached the edge of the rift after 6 jump cycles. The fuel cells were nearly depleted, and the reactor was starting to leak gamma traces. I rigged a shield mod using old mining filters to block the worst of it. It wasn't elegant, but it held. Kaedra's Belt was unlike anything Seru'vela had seen. Thousands of rock fragments spiraled in a shattered orbit, caught in the gravity wells of dead moons and ancient wreckage. Somewhere in the chaos floated Station Siltglass, a shadow port built into the corpse of a destroyed planetary harvester. It wasn't on any star maps. You had to know the pulse signature to find it. Fortunately, I did. The docking clamps shuddered as we attached to the underside of the station. As the airlock hissed open, the station's smell hit us like a slap. Oil, rust, stale heat, everything reeked of lawless survival. A towering woman with cybernetic eyes met us in the threshold. Her mechanical jaw clicked as she spoke. "You're late, Vorr." "Didn't know I was expected," I said, leading Seru'vela and Tirax past her. "You always come here when it's bad. This must be real bad." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Inside Siltglass, we paid for a medtech room in hard salvage, old mech parts I'd salvaged from the mining ruins. The resident medic, a gene hacker named Rusek, set to work on Seru'vela's wound. He operated with 6 hands, 3 natural, 3 mechanical, and no anesthetic. Tirax clung to me as Seru'vela bit down on a piece of rubber, her scream echoing through the bulkhead. "She'll live," Rusek grunted afterward, wiping silver, blood from his gloves. "But she's been marked." I turned sharply. "Marked how?" He activated a scanner, projecting a rotating diagram of her neural cortex. Something shimmered behind it. A black symbol burned into her biopath. "Dominion sigil," he said. "Tracker cell. Deep-coded. Can't cut it out. Can't shield it. Not unless you melt half her brain." Seru'vela sat up, pale but awake. "I didn't know," she whispered. "They must have done it when I was in cryo." My mind raced. The Dominion didn't just want her dead. They wanted to know where she went, who helped her, what she did, how long before they trace it. I asked. "Could be hours, could be days," Rusek said. "Depends how loud you've been." I looked around. We weren't quiet. We moved again that night. I traded the hauler for a stealth craft, the Valthorn. Sleek, fast, minimal trace. Belonged to a smuggler named Ovrak, who owed me a life debt from a long-forgotten mutiny on Deveron 6. He handed over the keys without a word. Seru'vela sat beside me in the cockpit as I ran pre-flight diagnostics. "I don't want to run anymore," she said softly. "I want Tirax to have a life, a real one." "You think I don't?" I said. My voice came out sharper than I meant. "I didn't ask for this either." She turned her head slowly. "But you stayed. That stopped me." She was right. I could have walked away a dozen times, back on Araxis, at the dome, at the station. But I didn't. Something kept me tethered to her, to this impossible child, to the fire behind her eyes. I sighed and looked away. Because someone has to help you finish what you started. Seru'vela narrowed her eyes. "You don't even know what I started." "No," I said, "but I know it's not just about surviving." She didn't deny it. As we left Kydra's belt behind, Seru'vela began to tell me the truth. Virelia hadn't just collapsed. It had been betrayed. A secret alliance, high officials, tech syndicates, and Dominion infiltrators had orchestrated the fall from within. Seru'vela, once their high strategist, discovered the plan too late. By the time she tried to expose it, her own commanders turned on her. She escaped with one thing the Dominion wanted above all, a prototype consciousness archive called the Nisari Core, an ancient artifact able to store and replicate the entire mental essence of a species. Not just data. Souls, and she had embedded part of it into Tirax. The child wasn't just her son. He was a living archive. "They'll burn worlds to get him back," she said. I looked back at the small boy, asleep again in his thermal pod. "They won't get him," I said. She met my eyes. "You still don't understand. If they extract the core from him, it won't just kill him. It'll wake up the entire Virelian hive mind." "Is that bad?" I asked. Her voice dropped. "It will end everything." We drifted through dark space for 3 more cycles, hiding between radiation belts and dead zones. During that time, I began to dream. Strange visions, alien landscapes, whispers in a language I didn't know but understood. Sometimes I would wake with images of stars I'd never visited, names I couldn't place, tears on my face. I started keeping a log, tracking the dreams. They formed patterns, coordinates, fragmented data. I didn't tell Seru'vela, not at first, until the child reached out. One night, while Seru'vela slept, Tirax crawled into my lap. His eyes, solid black pools, glowed faintly. He touched my chest and whispered, not with words, but with thought. You. Remember, I recoiled. Remember what? But the child just smiled. The next day, I confronted Seru'vela. Why is he in my head? I demanded. She looked at me carefully. Then, because he remembers who you used to be. My blood ran cold. You knew me before? You were one of us, she said. Before the fracture, before the core was hidden. I'm human, I snapped. You were more than that. The Veilthorn shuddered violently on the fourth cycle. A proximity alarm screamed through the cabin. Incoming vessel. No signature. Check the scanner. Nothing. Then it appeared. An obsidian ship. Smooth. Angular. Not built with any tech I recognized. It phased into real space like a ghost made of black glass. Seru'vela's face went pale. The Kaelen. Who the hell? Are they? I asked. She stood slowly. The ones who made the core. The ship fired. I pulled the yoke hard. Shields flared. We dipped into an asteroid cluster using the debris as cover. They're not Dominion, she said, gripping the chair. They're worse. They want to reclaim Tirax, not to destroy him, but to activate the archive. I understood now. This wasn't a chase anymore. It was a war for the future of consciousness. I activated the Veilthorn's last weapon, a warp pulse bomb. A dangerous relic, illegal in 7 sectors. I dropped it behind us, twisted the ship's orientation, and punched the FTL drive. As we tore through the edge of space, the bomb exploded. A ripple, a scream in the fabric of reality. The Kaelen ship was gone, but only for now. Seru'vela slumped beside me, exhausted, bleeding again. I caught her before she fell. I can't do this alone, she said. You won't have to, I whispered. Tirax stirred in his pod. The stars outside pulsed like a heartbeat. The war I thought I'd left behind had followed me through time and silence, and now it waited just beyond the veil of memory. Seru'vela slept in a field of synthetic moss in the Veilthorn's rest chamber, her silver skin dim beneath the bioluminescent lights. Tirax curled beside her, fingers twitching as if dreaming of things too vast for his small form. I sat alone in the cockpit, replaying the coordinates he had drawn into the glass with a single glowing fingertip. 5 numbers. A rhythm. Place. I recognized it, not from charts or training, but from something deeper, something older, like a star I had once promised to return to. When I fed the sequence into the nav system, the destination blinked back in violet text. Thale Dormisi hadn't heard that name in years. Maybe I never heard it at all. Maybe it had always been inside me. We arrived 2 cycles later. Thale Dormis wasn't on any official map. It floated on the edge of an ion storm, shrouded in magnetic anomalies and the skeletal remains of orbital rings. I threaded the Veilthorn through dead satellites and ruptured silos until we reached the planet's surface. It was quiet. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of memory. The world was covered in obsidian structures, all half buried in ash. Stone spires jutted up like broken fingers clawing at a dying sky. There was no sun, no wind, just gray. Seru'vela stood at my side, her eyes wide. I didn't think this place was real. You know it? I asked. She nodded slowly. Thale Dormis was a myth, a lost Varelian stronghold. They said it was where the architects went to sleep. I didn't ask who the architects were. Some part of me already knew. Tirax led us through the ruins without hesitation. His feet made no sound. His small hand wrapped around mine as we entered a massive temple-like structure carved directly into a black mountain. Inside, the walls were alive with pulses of faint light, runes that shimmered when we passed, lighting up like a heartbeat. At the center stood a massive chamber with a circular dais. I stepped onto it. The moment I did, the air changed. It thickened. My vision warped. Suddenly, I wasn't there anymore. I stood in a vast hall of mirrors. Each reflection showed a different version of myself. Warrior, child, stranger, shadow. They moved when I didn't, whispered things I couldn't understand, and then one by one, they shattered. Only one remained. He stepped forward from the glass. He looked like me, but not human. His eyes were stars. His veins glowed. You were not born, Kaelen Vorr, he said. You were chosen, formed. By who? I asked. By us. The last memory of a civilization long forgotten. The architects, I whispered. He nodded. We are the source, the origin of the core, the minds you carry, the blood that flows through the child. You were our failsafe, a sleeper, buried in the human shell until the time came. My heart thundered. I'm not human? You were, and more. You are hybrid, half vessel, half key. To what? To awakening. I snapped back into my body, collapsing on the floor of the dais. Seru'vela knelt beside me. What happened? Saw them, I said. The ones who built all of this. The ones who made the core. And I'm part of them. Her breath caught. That's why Tirax connected to you. You're bonded. More than bonded. Tirax wasn't just a child. He was a bridge between species, between timelines, between memory and flesh. And I was the gatekeeper. The key. We couldn't stay. The moment I awoke, I felt it. Something had followed us. The Kaelen ship reappeared above Thael Dormis, slicing through the atmosphere like a blade. But this time, they didn't. Fire. They descended. I gathered what I could. Seru'vela strapped Tirax to her chest, clutching a plasma carbine in her unsteady hands. We met the Kaelen envoy at the foot of the mountain. There were 3 of them, tall, featureless, plated in obsidian armor that reflected nothing, the ray. One in front spoke, voice like fractured glass. Return the child. Or perish. I stepped forward. He's not yours. He was never yours either, Kaelen Vorr. How do you know my name? We made your name. They weren't lying. Something in their tone, cold, familiar, dug under my skin. Can awaken the core without destroying him, I said. Let him choose. No one chooses, the envoy said. And then they attacked. The battle was chaos. Seru'vela fought like a spirit of vengeance, precise, deadly, unstoppable. I moved through the field like I had in my past life, instinct taking over. Tirax was caught between us, glowing with energy neither of us understood. The sky split open as the core awakened. Tirax screamed, and the sound wasn't a child's cry, it was a call. A beacon. Runes across the mountains lit up in sequence. The Kaelen hesitated, reacting not with fear, but with awe. Then they fell to their knees. Architect, the envoy whispered, voice trembling for the first time. Not architect, I said. He is new. And then I understood. Tirax wasn't a memory. He was evolution. The core didn't just preserve the past, it created something beyond it, and they were too late. The mountain trembled, a beam of light shot into the sky, tearing through space itself. I could see other ships, Dominion, Pirate, Scavenger, being dragged toward it. Not by gravity, but by thought, by signal. Seru'vela grabbed my arm. What's happening? He's choosing, I said. Tirax floated above us, his eyes twin. Nova's, his voice a dozen voices. I will not be owned. I will not be feared. I will not be lost. And then, silence. The light vanished. The Kaelen were gone. So was the Dominion. So were the ships. Only the three of us remained. We left Thael Dormis the next day. Tirax was quiet, older somehow, like he had seen everything there was to see and now wished only to be held. Seru'vela leaned against me in the ship's berth. Her wound was healing, but slowly. "You should hate me," she said softly. "I brought this war to your doorstep. I endangered everything you were." "I wasn't anything," I said. "Not until you." She looked at me unsure. I kissed her. It was quiet, soft, real. She melted into it like she'd been holding her breath for years. When we pulled away, Tirax was smiling. We were a family now, not by blood, by bond, by choice. Time, once a merciless tide, slowed in the silence after Thael Dormis. We drifted through the void, our ship, once stolen, now sacred, gliding weightless beyond any star we knew. I often watched Seru'vela sleep in the co-pilot seat, her arm curled around Tirax, whose breaths came slow, even, dreamlike. Not the sleep of exhaustion or fear, the sleep of peace. And yet, it would not last. You don't awaken an ancient artifact embedded in a child's DNA and expect to disappear. Signals rippled across the galaxy. Pulse codes, gravitational anomalies, quantum screams only those with the right scars could hear. And they were listening. All of them. Dominion warlords, the broken remnants of the Kevelon, secret Terran syndicates, even cults devoted to the resurrection of alien minds. They all knew something had changed, and all of them wanted a piece. We received the first message 3 cycles after the incident, encrypted in 9 dead languages, projected into our ship without tech. It wasn't a transmission, it was a vision. A being appeared in the cockpit, not physical, not digital, just present. Its form shifted between faces, mine, Seru'vela's, Tirax's, until it settled into something that looked vaguely like a woman made of galaxies. "You have disrupted the chain," she said. I stood, ready. "Who are you?" "I am called Valera Sin, the conductor of continuities." Seru'vela gasped. "You're one of the first ones." "No," Valera said. "I am what came after. A memory evolved beyond memory. The core was not made for preservation, it was made for evolution." I stepped forward. "Then what happens now?" Valera's eyes, nebulae in orbit, focused. On me. "You decide." We set course for Meridian Verge, a neutral system known for its ancient council grounds. It had been abandoned during the Scorching Era, left to fall into decay when the stellar accords were broken. But it was still known, still sacred. If anyone would listen, if anyone could be convinced to forge peace, to protect Tirax's future, it would be there. We arrived under cloak, the Valthorn sinking through rings of dust and debris to a platform, crumbling with age. They were already waiting, representatives from every major power, drawn not by invitation, but by intuition. They had felt Tirax's awakening. Some came to negotiate, others to claim, a few to kill. I stood before them, Kaelen Vorr, once soldier, now emissary of something much bigger than myself. Seru'vela stood to my right, her rifle sheathed but close. Tirax stood between us, small hands glowing with a warmth that made even assassins hesitate. I spoke, not in declarations or demands, in truth. "I was born a weapon," I began. "Built by a war I didn't understand. I served masters who taught me to kill in the name of peace. I betrayed and was betrayed." I looked at Seru'vela. Then I met a thief, a mother, a fugitive. She tried to steal from me and I chased her. When she fell, I could have left her, but I didn't. Because something in me remembered her. Not in my mind, in my soul. I gestured to Tirax. "This child holds more than history. He holds possibility, not a return to what was, a step toward what could be. You can try to cage him, to extract him, to weaponize him. My voice dropped, sharp as glass, but he will not let you. Silence. Then movement. An envoy from the Dominion stepped forward. Tall, masked, his voice a dry rasp. This child is a threat. You ask us to gamble the future of countless worlds on the whims of a child who isn't even fully formed. Seru'vela stepped forward. Then be grateful. Because he's the only one in this room who hasn't already burned a world. The envoy flinched. Another voice spoke, this time from a representative of the Terran Reclamation. What if you're wrong? What if awakening the core isn't evolution? What if it's extinction? Tirax raised his hand, and everyone listened. He didn't speak in words. Not then. Instead, he projected memory. Everyone in that hall saw the same thing. Children starving on outer colonies. Cities swallowed by Dominion silence. Soldiers weeping in the wreckage of their own victories. Then, a mother, falling, whispering, "Please, my child is hungry." Then light, then unity, then silence again. No one moved, until the representative from the Seldari Accord, a species that spoke only in harmonic resonance, stepped forward and sang a single note. It translated as, "We choose the child." Others followed, not all, but enough. A new alliance was born that day, fragile, unprecedented, raw. Not one built on control or fear, but on the unthinkable. Trust. In the months that followed, the core evolved. Tirax grew, mentally, emotionally, physically, faster than any known species, but with balance, compassion. He built bridges across rival nations, not through power, but through empathy, through shared memories. He taught people how to remember each other. I became his protector, his teacher, his father. Seru'vela and I stayed close, always. Our love was quiet but deep, like gravity. The kind you don't see until it pulls you. To your knees. She never stopped being a warrior, but she stopped running. They say a new age began that year, the age of resonance. Borders dissolved, fleets disarmed. The last of the Kaelen disappeared, some say consumed by their own fear of what Tirax represented. Others believed they bowed to him in secret and became his silent guardians. As for me, I changed too. My body, once purely human, began to shift. My blood carried echoes of the architects. My mind began to stretch, to see. I became a new kind of bridge between what was and what could be. I asked Tirax once, what happens if someone tries to undo all of this? He smiled, ancient and childlike all at once. Then we begin again. And so we watch, we wait, not as rulers, not as gods, but as reminders. That even the smallest kindness, offering food to a starving mother, can set fire to the stars and build a new universe in its ashes.